Okay, welcome. So, as I said, I'm Katie. I run a farm in Vermont. So my farm's name is Good Heart Farmstead, and we are a certified organic and real organic certified farm. We have been growing vegetables for 10 years. We do a year-round CSA, and we also just 2 months ago opened a year-round retail farm store. So sort of like a local grocery store in our community. So that's very new. And uh, when I when I was putting this presentation together, I've just been thinking about everything we've done over the last 10 years and also with this new venture too. Um, so when we started, just a quick little bit about me. When we started our farm, I started growing because I loved to be growing food. I didn't really have a business background, neither did my husband. We came to farming after working on other farms for a number of years. And so initially I thought, oh, we're going to show up and we're going to grow all this great food and people are going to love it because it's good for them. Um, and the first couple years, we really had to learn the hard way as we were going through what it meant to develop relationships, what it meant to market, how to get sales, how to get consistent customers. And when I started out, I was pretty nervous. I didn't like marketing. I didn't like sales. It felt pretty antithetical to what we were trying to do as farmers. And so I just eventually threw myself into learning all about marketing and have come to really enjoy it and find it very fun. But it took me a while to get to that point. Um, so that's a little bit about me. And as we go through, um, okay, so in this presentation, what we're going to talk about is what marketing is and what it isn't, what it has been and what it can become, and then how everyone here can apply it to your own businesses as well. We're going to talk about 3 things that you need to create a marketing foundation. We'll talk about 2 different types of marketing frameworks that you can use and that you've probably experienced as a customer. And then what I call marketing infrastructure. So your website, an email list, and social media. And then we'll put it all together. So before we do that, I'm just wondering how you all feel about marketing. So you can raise your hand or you can just throw out words, but when you think of marketing, what do you feel?
Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
Intimidating.
Intimidated. What was that? Manipulated. Yeah. Yes. Necessary. Okay, these are all really great words. Words I've heard from other farmers in the past as well. And I'll also throw in icky, gross, or like it feels like I have to brag just to get someone to buy my product. And I think we all feel these for really good reasons. Um, there has been a long history of persuasion and persuasion tactics that one on their own or a few here or there might be helpful to have people understand what it is we're selling and how we can serve them. But we also feel a lot of pressure from companies all the time that sort of like pull us in these different directions. And I know that I have made purchases and then felt like, why did I do that? I didn't even want this. And we don't want to make our customers feel like that. So the first thing that I want everyone to think about, oh, also raise your hand. I'm just wondering, is everyone in here a farmer, or if you're not a farmer, like in some sort of organization where you're having to communicate with people? Okay, I figured you would, but what I like to remind farmers and anyone in the food space is that what you're starting out with is a fundamental need that every person has. We all need to eat. And so when you can start there and remember that you are offering a fundamental need and you're also offering a choice, then you can start by marketing from a space of generosity, where you're saying, I know that you can go to the grocery store, you can go to the farmer's market, you can go to a farm stand, there's all these choices. I'm not forcing you to buy my tomatoes, but I am offering you something that will nourish you and that will make you feel good and is delicious. So thinking about it in that way. But I also want to, as I was preparing for this presentation, and just over the past year, pretty much since COVID hit, I've been thinking about marketing and thinking about the places that I've learned marketing from and all of these things that are sort of taken for granted that marketers are taught to do. And why does it feel gross or manipulative? And I came across a blog by a brand strategist named Rachel Albers, and I think she put it really well. So she wrote, when entrepreneurs, or you can think farm owners or business owners, say, I hate marketing, what we really mean is I hate an economic system that forces me to act like an evangelist for my own cult of personality. When we say I hate marketing, what we really mean to say is I hate the fact that within capitalism, it's not good enough to be good. It's not enough to be good at what you do. So does that resonate with anyone? I've been talking with, so along with farming, I also do some writing on the side, more in the winter than in the summer. But I've been talking with farmers, a lot of parents who farm. And within those conversations and interviews that I've done, I hear a lot about how farming and organic farming, regenerative farming, it doesn't really fit within capitalism. Like what we're trying to do is create communities that can feed and nourish themselves, can be sustainable, and yet we live in a system that really wants to be efficient and profitable over everything else. And so it can be really hard to feel like, how do we create profitable farms, which we need in order to stay in business within the systems we're in? But how do we do that in a way that can also create a different path that feeds our communities and supports us as farmers so that we can continue to farm? So I don't have the question, and one of the things, or I don't have the answer, and one of the things I appreciate about Rachel Albers, who wrote this statement, is that she's not putting forth an answer saying, I am the answer either. So really the goal with this presentation and with anything to do with marketing in my mind is to have a conversation and to work together to find another way forward, so that when you think of marketing and when you start to market your farm, you're not feeling like you're making your customers feel gross or manipulated. So, and on that note, if you have questions throughout this presentation, I do want it to be a conversation. So feel free to raise your hand and ask as we go along. So now we'll just get into like what is marketing? Now that we know kind of what it can feel like, what we don't want it to be, I'm going to ground this presentation in organic marketing, which is another way of saying consistent relationship building. Organic marketing can be things like writing a blog post or social media, anything that you are not paying for. So a paid ad is not organic. Organic traffic means it's coming to you without advertising, without paid advertising. And I also am a big fan of farming metaphors in all areas of life. So I like to think of it like succession planting. Marketing, I think oftentimes marketing can make us think of something like like Mad Men or, like 1950s advertising where it's like you put something out and you expect an immediate return. What I like to look at marketing as is more of a consistent process. It's like soil building. You're going to have your cover crops. There are going to be times where you'll add fertilizer or worm castings, and you have all these different ways of building the soil. And that happens over time. Sometimes your, cover crops is going to take a longer time, but they're going to be very effective. And sometimes you're going to need to like put your fish emulsion on to like really give your crop something that's going to be faster acting. So we have these different ways of marketing. Some take time, some take slightly less time, but none of it is something that's like, I'm going to shoot this out there and immediately get 100 customers. So I want you to think about it as something that you're doing consistently. And that's similar to relationships. So if you think about meeting someone for the first time, there are people that you meet that are like, wow, I feel like we've just talked for an hour, but I've known you for my whole life. And then there's people you meet who will maybe always just be acquaintances. And then there's everyone in between. But within all of that, we have these different types of relationships, and they're all worthwhile in different ways. And they all take time and they all take energy. So marketing is similar to that. We're also going to focus on what's called permission marketing. So permission marketing is what it sounds like. It's where customers give you their permission to be contacted. So you can think of this in terms of like an email list. You've probably been on websites where you get a pop-up and say, hey, would you like 10% off? Join our email list or something else. And you enter your email address and you're giving them permission to contact you. So that in itself is a really, however you feel about emails, we'll get to emails later. It sets a standard for asking permission to engage, and that sets, to me, a more respectful standard versus, when you're watching TV and commercials come on and you're just like, do I really need this laundry detergent? I'm not sure, but you just interrupted what I was doing to tell me I need to buy this product. So permission marketing and organic marketing you can put together to create longer term relationships that lead to community support for your farm, which then in turn means your farm supporting your community. So I want to share another quote from Seth Godin, who I really recommend if anyone wants to get little daily doses of great marketing insight, you can subscribe to Seth Godin's blog. I don't know him, but I really appreciate all of his writing. And he has a book called This Is Marketing. And so I know you can all see it, but I'll read it out loud. He writes, marketing is the generous act of helping others become who they seek to become. It involves creating honest stories, stories that resonate and spread. Marketers offer solutions, opportunities for humans to solve their problems and move forward. And when our ideas spread, we can change the culture. We build something that people would miss if it were gone, something that gives them meaning, connection, and possibility. So at its core, marketing is a conversation and it's also a promise. So the conversation is who you are, what you stand for, why you do what you do, and what you have to give. And the promise is that your offer is going to improve the lives of the people who engage with you. So as I said before, organic farmers are filling a fundamental need for people. You're growing food, you're helping people stay alive, literally, feed their bodies. And so the promise can be really simple. The promise can be, we grow food in a way that regenerates the land and produces nutritious and healthy food for you. You can word your promise in any way that resonates with you and that speaks to what you're doing. But that if you want a promise to say, yes, I'm going to use this, feel free to use that as you talk to your customers. And then the how is varied. So oftentimes, so what we're going to talk about soon is sharing your why versus your how, because your how can be as different from I grow, growing vegetables on a rooftop garden in a city to growing 200 acres in California or 1 acre in Vermont or raising livestock or using tractors or not using tractors or there's so many different ways to grow and raise food. But the what you do, so basically, but what you do isn't how you do it, it's the promise that you make to the people you serve. And just as an example, when my husband and I started our farm in 2013, we had sheep, we had chickens and pigs and turkeys, and also vegetables. And we had this idea of like, we're gonna be a full diet farm with 2 people running it. And it was just unrealistic. We definitely burnt ourselves out on that. But because we started out with this mission of like, we want to feed our community and we want to make it easier for people to access local food, how we did that was able to change without changing what our goal was. So we could shift into, hey, now we grow vegetables and we really specialize in that. And specifically, we specialize in a handful of vegetables, but we are able to serve our community and continue evolving without getting stuck on like, but we raise sheep. We started with sheep, so we have to stick with sheep. If we stuck with what it was, like how we were doing things, we probably wouldn't have made it to 10 years at this point. But giving yourself the flexibility to be rooted in why you're doing something and what your goal is, how you're trying to serve people, that allows you to also shift and grow as your business needs to do. So, anyone have any questions so far? Anything? Okay. So from this point forward, I just want you to think of marketing as a generous act, as something that you are offering to people, you're giving someone the choice, and that you really, and it's coming from the belief in what you're doing and knowing that you're creating a farm that offers people a way to feed their bodies, but also their minds, their souls, the whole community. Okay, so now we are going to get into marketing foundations. And this is again, like what I have found works for my farm and what I have found works for a handful of farms that I've worked with and helping them get to feeling good and effective at marketing. So those are made up of your holistic goal and your why, your vision, the stories that you tell, and who your ideal customers are. Is anyone here familiar with holistic goals, the idea of whole farm planning? Okay, so for anyone who's not familiar, there is an organization called Holistic Management International. They really tend to focus more on ranching and livestock, but the first year that we started our farm, I went through a program through UVM Extension called Whole Farm Planning for Beginning Women Farmers, where we learned this framework of holistic management and starting with your holistic goal. And so this idea is that when you are creating your business, you don't just have a financial goal. You do have a financial goal, but you also have an environmental goal and a social goal. And that those are the foundations of your business. And you get to decide, what do you want your life to look like? How do you want your business to support your life? And you go through the process of writing that down and getting clear on it. And then that can become kind of like your North Star. So for us, that helped us navigate when we said, okay, the sheep aren't working. Then we could go through all of these questions to keep us tethered to what our holistic goal is, without, again, getting stuck in like, but I made this one decision, so I have to stick with it. Oops. Sorry, I'm going to stay on this slide for a little bit. So, your holistic goal to me is the foundation of your marketing because it's the foundation of what it is you want to create in the world. And if you don't know what it is you want to create, why you want to create it, then you can't really communicate that to customers. So your holistic goal is made up of 3 things. I don't have a slide for this, so you can just write it down. It's made up of your why, or like your quality of life statement. So like you can think of this as your why in the sense of like, why am I starting this farm or running this farm? How do I want my life to be, and how do I want my life to feel? Think about how you need to act and what systems you need to support that farm and support your endeavors. So for example, if for our farm, one of our part of our holistic goal is that we help increase food access for low-income families. So part of that means that our systems need to be efficient enough that we can produce food at a price that is not exorbitant, and part of that is that we work with organizations like NOFA Vermont and their farm share program, so we can subsidize CSA shares and make them more accessible to people. So that's just one example of like, okay, here, part of my holistic goal is helping make sure that everyone can access our food. Maybe we're not there at this point, but that's something that we're consistently moving towards. So the next part of your holistic goal is like, how do you have to behave? This is a really good one for marketing because, as I said before, like marketing should be rooted in what you have to offer and in generosity and in creating relationships. So whereas, the icky marketing that doesn't feel good might start with like, how do we get sales? And it's all about just like getting people to buy something. This has to be rooted in how do I have a relationship that is continual. And so therefore, how do I have to show up in relationship? One of the things, because I present on marketing and teach marketing, and I have a whole email list that's separate from my farm list, but I also have customers on both of my email lists that I think, okay, if a farm customer is going to see how I talk about marketing, I need to feel really 100% great about that. I need to know that if my CSA customers are seeing like how I teach other people to increase their CSA retention, that they don't feel weird about that. Instead they can be like, oh yeah, that's exactly why I keep signing up, because I really love this relationship and I get all of these things from it and I appreciate the communication. So anyway, think about, how do you want to show up? How do you have to behave within your community and with your customers in order to fulfill your holistic goal? And then you think about your vision for your farm, for your future landscape, and for your future community. As I said, like, we have this goal of making local food accessible to everyone. That's not the reality right now, but that's something we can look to the future and say, this is our ideal. This is our North Star. How do we have to continually show up in our community? What organizations can we work with to make that a reality? And what does our community need to make that possible? So these questions are going to have different answers depending on the type of farm you are, where you are, what you're offering. But you can think about, in terms of like your future community, what makes it more possible to get your food out to the people you want to serve. For example, we just opened this farm store. We did that because I knew, as an active member of my community, I knew that people were saying, we need a place to buy food in our community that's not at the gas station or requiring a CSA membership. I happen to live where I live is like this little village that is about 20 minutes away from the closest grocery store. And so that's something that, having been there for 10 years, having served on the planning commission, having been, going to community lunches, I knew this about my community. I knew that because I'm in constant relationship with them. And so when I look at the future of saying, like, how do I want to make local food more accessible, a very specific way was have a store where people don't need to spend $400 at once at the beginning of the season to have access to vegetables. They can come in and get a bag of lettuce whenever they want. So making it physically easier. That's just one example. So that's a holistic goal. I know I just said a lot. So again, feel free to raise your hand if you want any clarification. But yeah. So the next one is your stories. So once you have your holistic goal, which is basically your foundation, why you're doing what you're doing, how you want your farm to be and feel, and what you want it to become in the future, you go to your stories. So there's this saying in marketing that facts tell and stories sell, which may be another one of those like marketing sayings that can make you feel a little like, not sure about that, but it's true. So as people, we've kind of evolved to really respond to stories. Stories tell us, again, like what the motivation and the meaning behind what it is we're doing, and it gives us a way to connect to people. Stories help us understand each other and can be a window into becoming a customer. So so you can gather stories as you are creating your holistic goal, thinking about, why did I start this farm? How did I start this farm? But one of the stories that is really great to share with potential customers, with your community, is like your farm origin story. We all like origin stories are really compelling. That's why there's so many like Marvel movies of every different superhero because we just all want the origin stories. But you can share your story. Why did you start farming? How did you get into it? Why now? Why here? For example, one of the stories I've shared with customers is my memory of harvesting carrots as a kid, probably like 5 or 6 years old, and just like pulling carrots out of the ground, being like, whoa, just being in awe of the color that could come from carrot that you just pull up from the ground. And people connecting with that. That story isn't even really selling anything. It's just saying, I remember being a kid and being amazed by this. And that story can then lead into, and now my son loves carrots, and that can lead into, hey, and actually our CSA members tell us that their kids actually get excited to eat vegetables now because we grow really delicious carrots. And so that leads into, oh, so if you want your kids to actually like vegetables and ask for seconds, you could consider getting a CSA from us. So that's like this journey of, you can share a story here and then link it over here, and it evolves to becoming an offer and becoming a way that someone says, oh yeah, I really want my kids to stop asking for, I don't know, whatever snack. My son still asks for like candy right before dinner, and I'm like, you eat candy like at Halloween, what is happening here? But you still, so it's not a promise that your kids will stop asking for whatever it is, but it will. We have heard from our customers over and over how they love that their kids come to the CSA pickup and just eat a bag of peas on the way home, and that they can feel really good about that. I've also shared my other origin stories, like I was a vegetarian for 6 years and decided I wanted to eat meat again. And I decided I needed to understand how livestock was raised in order to feel good about that. And that's how I started farming. I didn't mean to become a farmer. I just wanted to eat chicken. And And so I got a job on a diversified farm. And that was the beginning of my journey. And I can share that in one sentence. I can write an entire story about it. I have written a whole story about it, and then share it in all these different ways. And that leads into talking about like, hey, here's the issue with factory farm meat, and here are these alternatives with grass-based regenerative farming that can support communities in all these different ways. So again, like you find your stories and then you can use them as teaching moments and ways of connection with people so that they understand what it is you're doing, like why you are doing what you're doing. So the last part of your foundation is your ideal customer. So the first two parts is really understanding your motivation and what you have to offer. And then you get to who you are serving. So does anyone here sell at farmers markets? Okay. So have any of you had people say, why is this so expensive? You haven't? Okay. Like, wow.
Yeah, no, I haven't actually. Honestly, they come up and they tell us,
Yeah.
like it's till
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool. So, okay, so just to repeat it in case anyone didn't hear. So, you haven't actually had customers say, why is this so expensive? It's more of like, wow, your vegetables look beautiful. And then you get into a conversation about no-till and how you're growing vegetables, which is a really great example of conversations and of relationship building. Yes.
I recently got real organic certification in addition to USDA, and that stopped those questions
Interesting.
because I put information material around and the stickers on the things that are actually grown 100% at my farm.
Mm-hmm.
And that stopped the conversation about those things.
Yeah. So you got certified real organic and put out information and use the marketing materials like the stickers you're basically educating people before they even get to asking you the questions. So that, which is a really great way. Like there's so many marketing materials you can use to educate customers. So by the time you're actually talking, they have this basis of understanding and value of what you're doing so that you can then start from a whole different spot. I know that when I worked for a couple farms that raised organic grass-fed livestock. And I would say that for when I was working farmers markets selling meat, I tended to get more of the like, why is this so expensive versus produce? But it really can depend. And it also can depend on, you know, who your customers are, like where you are. But so anyway, kind of coming back to your ideal customer with all of this is, it sounds like you have ideal customers where they're really engaging, and you've helped bring your customers on a journey of understanding the value of what you're doing. And there will still be customers there are always going to be people who just won't even attempt to go to a farmer's market, or they're not going to think about a CSA. And it may be for a whole factor of reasons, and that's okay. So the point of your ideal customer is knowing that you don't have to convince everyone to buy your food. I think it's really common and very easy to think as farmers, well, our product is for everyone. Everyone can benefit from it because everyone can benefit from it. That doesn't mean you need to reach everyone. I think another aspect of capitalism is that it puts us into this mindset of we need to compete with everyone and everyone is a competitor. But something that's really beautiful about the organic community is that we can shift that. You know, we can shift into like, we are all in our own ways helping create a market for people to engage, and we don't have to be competing against each other all the time. Like, if we need to, if it can be very hard to get out of the competitive mindset, but if you find yourself in that mindset, it can be like, okay, but the competition is actually, the grocery store. It doesn't have to be the other farmer down the road. Like we can lift each other up instead of being like, well, I'm better. No, like I think it benefits everyone to think about how we're all engaged in community. Um, and so when you're thinking of who are you selling to, think first of the ideal customer. I'm sure, raise your hand if you can think of someone who you just love. Like if all of your customers were this one person, your life would just be so easy. Yeah, I definitely have one. We call her Chani. That's her actual name. We had 100 Chanis. And she also knows that. She's a neighbor and is just so supportive and loves the food we grow and just tells us all the time how it has improved her life. And I just, when I'm feeling stressed out, I just think of Chani. And like she's someone that really reminds us of the importance of what we're doing. And then raise your hand if you can think of a customer or some customers, if you're like, if this person never bought from me again, my life would be easier. I won't say the name of that person. But that's, so I think of like this difference. So I think of someone who has a worldview that like already encompasses the value of organic food, already encompasses the value of supporting local economies, the value of feeding their families locally, and so when you're thinking of your ideal customer, you can ask what is their worldview, what are the things that they dream of, what are the things they're scared of, how does my product relate to any of those things. So for example, maybe your ideal customer, again, thinking of a family, we just happen to have a lot of families in our CSA, but one of their frustrations might be like, I can never get my kids to just eat their vegetables. And we offer a way to say, hey, here's some like really delicious peas or carrots or whatever it is. We have one kid who just has like, he's like kohlrabi fanatic now. It's just like, I just want all the kohlrabi. But you can think about what is it that is missing in their life or that they're seeking. Sometimes your ideal customer, and with marketing, you're not just thinking about what your product does. You're thinking about how does your product improve the lives of your customer. So yes, you are actually selling food, but when they're buying this food, they're getting a lot more. They're getting a direct connection to the landscape, to the land that the food's coming from. They're getting a relationship with you as their farmer. They're getting this sense of community and this sense of like, oh, I'm actually really I'm engaged in a different way because I am connected to this local farm. They are getting this sense of, hey, I'm doing something really well as a parent right now. I'm taking care of my children. Or, hey, now we actually all on CSA day, we all get together and we have a really great meal. And it might just be one night a week, but like that night becomes like this anchor for our week. And so more than food, you're giving them this whole aspect of nourishment, of taking care of each other, of them taking care of their family, of themselves. You're giving them the joy of eating something delicious, the joy of being in the kitchen. And again, for someone who's not your ideal customer, that might not resonate, but you don't have to get everyone in the world. You just need to serve the people who to meet your sales goals. We need to run our businesses. We need to be profitable. But yes.
So just thinking back to something you were talking about and trying to identify inefficiencies and get them out of the way to really be able to drive
Yeah.
access. This seems like a process that could find me spinning my wheels pretty quickly, or if I think about it in a different way, I start to get into it. If I do this in a vacuum, it does somehow approach manipulative,
Mm-hmm.
what are some tools to be transparent and reach out to customers?
Yeah.
That make it more efficient in terms of social media platforms or surveys or things like that?
Yeah. So the question is for everyone, how do you, like, when you're thinking of all of this in a vacuum, it can start to feel like you're getting into the manipulative realm, and how can you be more transparent about your marketing? Is that right? Like,
Specifically the tools that
specifically
create the dialogue to connect to.
Yeah. Yeah. So what tool, and we are going to get into tools too, but just quickly, I'm always pretty transparent about when I'm asking for customer feedback. I will often say your feedback will help us reach more people. And when we can reach more people, like we will be able to sell more CSA shares, or it will help bring people into the store so we can sell more food. That means that more people are eating local food. So I always try to connect it with like, yes, we are selling more, and that means that more people are engaging with the local food system. And um, there are aspects of like asking people to post a Google review. So everyone should have a Google business listing, and ask people to post a review there. That becomes a public thing, and anyone who's posting knows it's public. And then you can use those testimonials to point to your offerings. I will also directly ask CSA members for testimonials and say, hey, what is it that you love about the share? What are some things that could be different? You don't have to ask a lot, just ask a few questions. And then when you're asking, you can say, do I have your permission to share this in our marketing? And so you're always like, you can always just be really straightforward and upfront of like, hey, we're trying to grow our customer base, and sharing your experience will help us do that. And usually, if you have a relationship with your customers, they're usually really happy to do that because they want you to keep going. Like they want to keep getting food from you. So does that answer a little bit?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Sort of generate these spaces to think about that.
Right. Sort of like a pull versus a push. Like, yeah. So we'll get into that. Yeah. And you had your hand up too.
Perhaps you said this. Sorry, I missed it, but how do you go before that and broaden your base to get CSA customers? Because my experience, it isn't everybody that wants to be in a CSA because of all the work that's involved.
Yeah.
And when you get a box, you have to do things to, put some things in the freezer and do this, do that. Some people don't want to do that. That's too many vegetables at one time is overwhelming. You know what I mean? So how would you gather a broader base to be able to find that CSA customer? Yeah.
So the question for everyone is, how do you broaden your customer base? How do you bring more people into the potential customer base? And we will, this is actually a really good segue. So we're just going to go right into these two marketing frameworks, which is a funnel and a flywheel. And so I'm gonna like answer your question throughout this section, but please let me know if we need to come back to it. So, but to start off, I would say that part of marketing is education, and it's really common for CSA customers to stop getting a CSA because there's too much of one thing at once, or there's just so much food, or they don't know what to do with it. So part of marketing really can be education. And when we get to talking about the infrastructure, like your website, so your website, your email list, your social media, that can really be a lot of educational content. But first, the marketing frameworks here. So the funnel is really, like, you see all in marketing funnels all the time, and I would say I don't like funnels. That's like the very short intro to funnels. But we're going to start with talking about a funnel, and also talking about the words that that we are taught in marketing. So when I like dove into learning about marketing, it was very much funnel based. So we're talking about leads and prospects and talking about people, but calling them leads and calling them prospects. And again, like over the last couple of years, thinking about how do we shift systems within the farming movement, but also within our country. Obviously, this is not a one person having all the answers. This is going to take everyone to help figure it out. But I really believe that language is very, very powerful, and how we talk about marketing really influences how we engage with people. So when we have a funnel, the top part is where you get your leads. So these are just like anyone who may come into your orbit. So maybe they're walking through the farmer's market and they just see your sign. They might not stop the first time, but there's like this sense of awareness. And then maybe they're like Googling farms, like CSA farms near me, or they're going to the farmer's market website to see who's there and what products they have. And they're getting more, your farm name is becoming more familiar to them. So that's sort of like the lead aspect. Or maybe you get written up in the local newspaper, or someone, you have some word of mouth with really happy customers telling their friends about you. But the top of the funnel is like people who have a general awareness that you're there, and that's sort of it. Then the prospects is like you get them onto your email list, or you get them to actually come to your stand at the farmer's market and start engaging. And they might not buy something yet, but they're checking out your website. They're looking at the products you have to sell. They're hearing about your CSA, however it is you're selling. And they're starting to ask questions. They're like really curious now. They're like, I think I might go sign up for a share. I think I'm going to like actually go there first at the next farmer's market. And then they get farther into the funnel and they buy something and they become a customer, and then you get money. So that's a very, very simple way of like showing the funnel. But when I think about being a customer and being in a funnel, I just feel really uncomfortable. Like I don't want to be pushed through a funnel just to be like, spat out at the other end, just to go into another funnel and another funnel, which in the world of online marketing, there's a lot of funnels that just like try to pull you through and like get you to sign up for this course or buy that. And then you buy it and then they just put you into their next funnel. And it can be really like exhausting. But again, I, as a customer, don't want to be talked about as a lead. I don't want my personal journey to buying something to be focused not on who I am, but on how much money I'm going to spend. That's not the way I want to be engaged with as a customer. And so I don't want to engage with my customers that way. So I was starting to think about circles instead of funnels. And I came across a blog post on ConvertKit, which is an email service provider. It's the platform I use to send our farm emails. And they had this whole post about flywheels. So the idea of a circle instead of a funnel. So instead of pulling people through this funnel just to get sales, like where the sale is the driving force. Again, when we run businesses, we need sales. It's not bad to make money. We need that. We need to like pay ourselves, pay our employees. So it's not bad. But I personally prefer the model where the customer and you can say customers at the center, but really the relationship is at the center. And so where your service, your marketing, and your sales, they're all feeding into each other all the time, but they're feeding into each other where they are really there to serve the customer. Another farming analogy that I like to use is thinking about seed to seedling to harvest and back to seed. So if you look at this circle here, you can think of it as like an open pollinated plant. Okay. So there's a lot of room for growth in this circle. So you start with like the inspiration. Maybe you're like, this is what I'm doing. This is the farm I'm creating or that I have and I want to grow. And there's all these pollinators that come in. And that's like the conversations you have with people who are learning about your farm or the conversations with current customers. And then you might have some weather come in and some of it might be turbulent and some of it might be really great. But this is all like feedback you're getting. You know, every business is going to have feedback from customers that's like, oh, I really need to improve in this area. Like, oh, that was a really hard lesson to learn, but now I can improve and get better. And then you have sales, you have the harvest. You're like, okay, here we are. Like, we went through this whole cycle and now I have this product to offer you. And then by that time, okay, so with open pollinated seeds, you're not harvesting everything. You're like something go to seed, so the metaphor works. But then you have the seeds at the end, and some of those are gonna just like blow away in the wind. And those are the customers who might like come try your thing, and they're just like, it's just not a great fit, and that's okay. They're just gonna like go find something that is a good fit. And then there's gonna be some unviable seeds that might be an enterprise or a certain crop or a variety that didn't work out for you. And that's just like, okay, like that just didn't work. We have to change this. We're gonna make these adjustments and move on in a different way and leave those unviable options behind. And then there are the viable seeds that like just fall right back down to the ground. They don't really go anywhere. They just keep coming back and keep growing stronger and stronger. Those are the customers that are returning year after year, that are helping you create great word of mouth marketing, which is the most powerful marketing because people trust. It's easier to trust someone giving you a recommendation than it is to like see an ad and be like, I think I can trust this. So within the idea of a circle, there's all this flexibility. There's options for people to come in at different times and to leave at different times. And also throughout the whole thing, there's room for you to shift what you're doing. So it's a constant conversation where you're getting better because you're listening to and learning from your customers, giving them what you're offering, and there's just all this space for growth. So basically both of these frameworks are doing similar things. And you might think like, what does it really matter if we call it a funnel or a circle? Because they're both in essence a customer journey from awareness to purchasing. But I mentioned this before, I really believe that the framework, the words we use, the frameworks we use makes an impact on the relationships. And again, as a customer, I want to know that I am a full person in someone's eyes. So I want to engage with customers in that way too. I want to respect them. I want to show up as I stated in my holistic goal. I want to show up as generous. I want to show up as smart. I want to show up as, able and to feed my community. And I want to show up as trustworthy. So all of these things impact how I think and talk about marketing. And I really believe that customers feel that. I think we all, just as so many of you spoke at the beginning saying marketing, the words that marketing bring up, like icky and manipulative and uncomfortable, but also necessary. How can we take this necessary thing and make it feel generous and as an act of relationships? Okay, so we're gonna go, I'm just gonna check what time it is real quick. Okay, great. So now moving from that, we're going to go on to the infrastructure. So again, this is the very basic infrastructure, which is your website, your email marketing, and social media. And I put them in that order for a reason. I see often people just wanting to like have a Facebook page and that's it. The reality is that Facebook is its own corporation and can and does shut down pages all the time, and sometimes for no reason. So you want a website because that you can think of it as like your virtual landscape. It's like the place that you own online. No one else can come in and like shut it down or change an algorithm and make you lose, your reach for your followers. The second one is email marketing, and we have some slides coming up on each of these things. Email marketing is one of the best ways to communicate with your customers. I love email marketing. We'll get into that soon. And then social media I put last, partly because I have a love-hate relationship with social media where I think it can be really fun sometimes and really draining other times. And also because it's a space that is important because it's a place where you can get a lot of leads. So you can get a lot of, see, even I have to catch myself being like, don't say leads, say people who may be interested. It's a great space to connect with people who are not yet customers, connect with your community. But again, it's on a platform that you don't own. Algorithms change all the time. Maybe 2% of your followers ever see a post. So it's helpful, it's important, but it should not be the only thing you rely on. So the farm website, starting with this, and I'm just going to go through some basic aspects. There's a lot. We could spend hours just on each part of the infrastructure, even days maybe. So again, if you have specific questions, just let me know. I've worked with all three of these website platforms. If you are, when you have a website or when you're starting a website, these are three great options. So Squarespace and Wix are really great, drag and drop, really easy to get started on, very simple. And if you want to be the one in charge of your website and you don't have a lot of tech skills or you don't want to develop more tech skills, Squarespace and Wix are like really great options. WordPress.org, which is different than WordPress.com. WordPress.org is an open source software. I have both of my websites on WordPress.org. There's a higher learning curve. It can be a little more complicated, but it also gives you probably the most flexibility for your website. And in terms of cost, it can be, not necessarily always, but it can be a lower cost solution because it's based on open source software. So anyway, that's like the real quick rundown on those options. But the short story is you need a website, and these are three great options for starting a website. Once you have your website and you've chosen what platform you want to use, the basic aspects you need on your site are a homepage, and that's sort of like your welcome, like that saying, here, you have a headline, you have an introduction of who you are, what you offer, and then links to your about page. So your about page is actually like the first or second, or one of the most highly trafficked pages on a website. And that's because a lot of people who are just finding out about you are going to want to understand who you are and what you do and why you do it. So the about page can often feel like the hardest thing to write because it's hard to write about ourselves. It's hard to write about our farms. So when you're thinking about your about page and what you want to tell the people coming to your site, is think about what your customers need to know about you in relation to them. So your about page is about you, but it's really about your customers and what you offer them. So for example, on our farm website, goodheartfarmstead.com, our about page is really the story of our farm, saying in relationship to like what we offer. We say like, here's, when we started, but like we started this because we want to make local food accessible to everyone. And that's why we offer these subsidized shares. And that's why we give 10% forward towards subsidized shares, because we believe in food access. And so the about page is really that relationship that we're wanting to establish with people. And then we have like, our pictures and like some fun little things too. Because I think it's nice to like give people some of your personality. Like I let people know my husband drinks cold pressed coffee and I drink black tea. And they don't need to know that about me. But it's something that's like just a nice little tidbit. People feel strongly about coffee and tea. So yeah, yes.
Do you have any suggestions on helping folks with WordPress and the climb, like tutorials, online tutorials, any resources?
Yeah, so just real quickly, there's a website called wpbeginner.com, and they have a great tutorial on getting started with WordPress. Yeah. Yes.
Say the initials again with words
For WordPress or
for what you just.
WP.
P like in Peter.
Oh, P like in Peter. Yes, sorry. So W like water, P as in Peter, and then the word beginner.com. And did you get that? Okay. So yes.
I actually had another question about the about page. You know how like in a resume you want to keep it to one page so it's not super overwhelming. What is the length or like what is necessary to like keep it less overwhelming so people actually read it?
Yeah, that is such a good question. Your about page does not need to be very long. The one way to help people read a full page is to use headlines. So, having bolded headlines and then a few lines. When you're writing online, you want to use more paragraph breaks. So, paragraph online might be 1 to 2 to 3 sentences, and then break it off, and then like have some space in between. Typically, when people are reading online, they're scanning more than they're reading. So you want to set up your about page in a way that makes it easy to scan and get all the information you need. And it can be, I wouldn't, it's hard because like, on a web page, it's just like one big scroll, but you don't need it more than a few paragraphs. It can really be like a jumping off place where you say what people need to know, and then invite them to join your email list, where you can create a welcome sequence where you're sharing a story over a few different emails. And so your email list is going to be a place where you can engage and share your story and do education much easier and over a longer period of time than on your website. And we're going to go to the email next. So that's the home page, the about page, and then you want a product page, which, it's just like that's where you would list your CSA. If you're not selling products online, you would use this as, here's the farmer's market that we sell at. And here's what you can expect to get. It also can be very simple. And then a contact page, just a place where people can easily go and send you a message. Does anyone have any website questions before we go on to email? Okay. Again, I'm trying to get a lot in here so you can take some actions away from here, but you're also all welcome to email me afterwards and follow up with any more questions. Okay, so email marketing, the other thing about your website is like you want to have what's called an opt-in on your website, a place for people to sign up for your email list. And that's where the permission marketing, we come back to permission marketing, where people are signing up and saying, hey, I want to hear from you. You have my permission to email me. Does anyone here not like email? Oh, wow. Okay. Sort of. I've taught sessions like this completely on email marketing, and usually like more than half of the people that come like really don't like email, but I think they feel it's necessary, which I totally believe it is. So email marketing, it's not sending email blasts from your Gmail account. It is using a service provider like ConvertKit, MailerLite, MailChimp. There's a whole lot. Those are 3 that are really easy to work with and great to get started with. I have used MailChimp. I now use ConvertKit. Everyone's going to have their own preferences, but all of them will do the job for you. And the important aspect of using an email service provider is that it sets you up for permission. It keeps you legally protected because all of these service providers are up to date on privacy and consent. So again, like there are a lot of different privacy laws, some that apply in Europe, but we should apply here. Just to like, again, it's all based around consent and protection and privacy, and making it easy for people to opt in or opt out. So the great thing about email marketing is you never have to feel like you're annoying people with your emails because they said, hey, please email me. And if you do annoy them, they can unsubscribe and you don't have to do anything about it. So it's a really great way, again, to like be in relationship. Ways that you can grow your email list is, as I said, through your website. You're going to use social media. I really believe in using social media as a way to point people to your email list and to your website, because those are the places that are sticky, in the sense that people don't get distracted. It's very easy on social media to just like see a picture and just keep swiping, and scrolling. And you might be in someone's mind for a second and then they just keep going right by. If you can use social media captions or social media bios to point people to email and to your website, that's where you can actually engage with people on a deeper level. And I mentioned earlier with your email, creating what's called an automatic welcome sequence. Again, another reason you want to use an email service provider. So all of these providers give you the option for creating a sequence of emails where when someone signs up, they automatically get one email that welcomes them. So that might be like, hey, welcome. If you have me, for our farm, we give people like a greens cookbook. So people will sign up and then they'll, in exchange for signing up, they get a PDF of all these different ways to prepare the types of greens that we grow and sell. And then after that first email, then I start to tell the story of our farm. So then I'll do like more of an introduction in the second email. And then in I think the second email I say, hey, have you tried any of these recipes? Here's my favorite one. And then I tell a little story about growing pak choi for the first time, like not knowing what it was until I worked on a farm. And so I'm using these stories to like share how I got into farming, but also to say, hey, it's totally okay if you don't know what these vegetables are, because like I was 23 before I did. And here I am, like now I'm actually growing them. And then you can lead people through this journey of 3 to 4 emails where by the last email, you can say, hey, and here's where we sell at the farmer's market. Here's our CSA sign up page, and here's how you can buy from us. And so it's presenting it as an offer after someone has gotten to know you. You're not just saying, hey, I got your email, now buy from me immediately. It's giving the space and respect to let people get to know you and understand who you are, why you're doing what you're doing, and they get to, have this relationship and then decide, do they want to engage more? And some people will just stay on your email list and not buy for years. And then some people will buy right away. So yes.
What is the space between your bulk emails, the second, third, fourth?
Yeah, so I can't remember off the top of my head, but typically I send out emails once a week. And so I think I have my welcome sequence set up to be that. I think I might have my welcome sequence set up to be a little shorter, but at the end of each email, I'll say, "Hey, I'll be back in touch in a few days with more information." So I end the email with that, saying like, "I'll be back in touch with this." And so, but typically I would say, because people do get overwhelmed with email, it's great to have 3 to 4 days spaced out in between. And then I write a weekly email to everyone who has already gone through that email sequence. So these email service providers will just automatically help you set up so anyone going through a welcome sequence won't also get your regular email until they've finished that. That gets into some more technical stuff, but it's all very doable. And then the last part of email marketing is just to be consistent. So just like you would, it would feel weird if a friend like didn't talk to you for 6 months and then called and was like, "Hey, want to like buy a CSA for $500?" Like that would just feel weird, right? Part of the great thing of email marketing is that when you're consistent and you're just sending daily updates, or not daily, weekly updates from the field, or sharing the story of your farm, you're not having to sell all the time. And then when it comes time to sell something, and because I'm more of a CSA, I've been a CSA farmer for 10 years, and now I'm like moving into this like, year-round farm store where we actually are selling things every day. So there can be a slightly different approach. But the point is that you don't have to sell something in every email that you send, and you probably shouldn't. You really can use this as a way to educate about the CSA. Maybe that your customers' pain points are like, "I don't know what to do with this whole box of vegetables." And so your welcome sequence could actually be, "Here's how a CSA works, and here's what you do with these vegetables, and here's all these resources we have to help you along the way," so that uncertainty they might have can be acknowledged and then taken care of. You can say, like, as the farmer, you probably are very aware of what your customers' pain points are, and all of those can be acknowledged, and then you can help lead them through having a successful experience with the CSA through education, whether it's on a blog or email, or in person when they're picking up their share. Okay, so we're going to just kind of like try to move through this a little quickly because we only have about 10 minutes left and I want to leave some room for questions. But social media, moving on to it. Just wondering, how do people feel about social media? Like, raise your hand if you like social media in general. Okay. So anyone just like really don't like it? Doesn't like it? Okay. Yeah. So that's very normal. There's a lot of people who just didn't raise their hand, so maybe you just kind of feel like I go back and forth. So just like with email, where I said, send a consistent email, with social media, the important thing is to be consistent, to show up a lot, which might mean once a week, it might mean 3 times a week, it might mean 5 times a week. Different platforms are going to perform differently. But I think the most important thing is to only sign up for social media platforms that you enjoy enough to actually be there consistently. Social media rewards people who are posting often and kind of like pushes you down if you don't show up for a while. In terms of what's important on social media, the importance is the engagement. So you might have 100 followers and wish you had 10,000, but if those 100 followers are commenting and engaging with the things that you share, that's more important than 10,000 followers who never engage at all. because we're growing relationships. We're not just trying to be like the most popular person on Instagram, because popularity doesn't necessarily mean you're running a profitable farm. Like the whole reason to use social media is to engage with people and help grow your community and help understand what people are looking for and help make sales. So again, like, it's more important to be consistent than to be everywhere. If you really don't like Facebook, you don't need to be on Facebook. If you really don't like Instagram, you don't need to be on Instagram. But if you're going to be somewhere, just make sure that you're showing up consistently. What I find really helpful on social media is to always point to your website and to your email list, but also you don't have to do things in the moment. So, I almost pretty much never use Instagram as an instant thing. You can create a marketing calendar, and I have a link on my website that I'll show you towards the end, where I can map out like how you can create a marketing calendar just so you don't get like overwhelmed and lost in the whole process. But yeah, so social media, it's great. Use it if you're going to be there. But it's more harmful to create a social media profile and then not post for a year than it is to just not have one at all. Because if you say you have a Facebook page and you stopped using it in 2020, if people are Googling you and find your Facebook page and the last thing you posted was 2 years ago, they're going to wonder if you're even still open. And that's really the most important thing. Like, you don't want anywhere you are on the internet is a potential aspect for customers to contact you. And if they can't figure out if you're still open, that's a big barrier. So you just want to be active so people know that you are still selling things. So yeah, all right. And again, so last part, just being consistent. And I already said this, but when you are in communication, it makes selling easier because, one, people know it's coming. So going back to transparency, and how do you like take away this feelings of manipulation and like be transparent with your customers. One thing I do is a month before we open the CSA sales, because we do CSAs by season and we don't have sales just constantly open. So we have a specific sales window. And a month before that, I will start telling people, hey, like the fall CSA is coming up. Signups are going to be open soon. And here's the link to all the information. So before it's time to sign up, people have the information of how much it costs, where the pickup is, what they're going to get in their share. They have everything they need to make that decision. And I'm not saying you have to make this decision right now. So I kind of like take the pressure off of them by giving them that information up front and giving them enough time to sort of make that decision. And in my weekly emails, I just keep talking about it, and I'll say, we just sowed the fall carrots and we love fall carrots because after the first frost, they get so sweet and they're like so delicious. And so we share these aspects of that particular season that we know our customers really love, and help them remember like, oh, this is coming up. And it's not like just sprung on them and then saying like, you need to do this right now. And then we say, and it will be open for this amount of time. And then having a certain window of when you can sign up for a CSA is helpful, because sometimes people just need deadlines to take action. And so that deadline can help people actually sign up in a time frame that works for you as a farmer. And then if you are getting down to like only having 10 shares left, you can tell people like, hey, we only have 10 shares left. We're probably going to sell out before the sales windows close. So if you want one, like, please do that now. And again, so you're just being honest about where you're at. And that communication is just really helpful for your customers too. So, with that, I created a page on my website which lists some different blog posts I've written more to like expand on different aspects of marketing. You can also get, I have a free guide to email marketing, which is on there. So you can, if you'd like to sign up for my email list, you're welcome to do that, and I'll send you the email marketing guide. If you want to go any deeper, I have kind of like I wouldn't say it's a crash course, but it's a course on email marketing to help you like really implement more of that. You can get more information of that on my website. And then if you just have any questions, I'm happy to hear from you. I'd love you to send any questions. And oftentimes questions that I get from farmers end up turning into like blog posts or things that I can teach on. So it's helpful for me, and I will always respond to you personally too. So yeah.
Yes, I can ask you just to read something and you know, we have a CSA, it's 18 weeks. Our current price is $385 and $585, small share, large share. It's no secret that our costs, like everyone else, are through the roof.
Yeah.
So we've had lots of conversation and with other farmers, and we're thinking of doing, and I guess I want to feedback on this, as opposed to a massive price increase, we're just going to go from 18 weeks to 16 weeks. I'll be honest, I mean, it'll be in the fine print, but we're not going to point that out to people.
Yeah.
And just say, hey, you know, costs are up, we've had to make some adjustments. We'll raise the price $10 or $15 and just send it out. It's basically accounts for about the 15% price increase we need to do.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's disingenuous because we're not pointing out you're getting 2 weeks less?
Well, I would say that as it's important to tell people it's going to be 16 weeks. So we did this with our farm. We used to do a 20-week CSA, and then we changed it to 18 weeks, and then we changed it to 16 weeks because we just realized that was going to work better for us as well. And we hadn't raised prices for a few years.
So we raised.
So and this change we did a few years ago. Also because we just wanted to have like a larger fall share and a shorter summer share. We found that it was easier for people to sign up for a shorter summer share because that price was a little bit lower. But initially, I'm trying to think, since we did this a while ago, I'm trying to think of how we did it. I think the important thing is that you just put all the information out there, and you don't necessarily need to explain it. So if someone says, hey, last year it was 18 weeks and this year it's 16 weeks, you can have that conversation with someone who's asking about it. But I would say as long as all the information is out there of like, here's the length of the share, here's the cost of the share, I personally don't think you need to like start defending yourself before someone even asks a question. So I think the most important thing is having all the information clearly laid out, and then people can make that decision for themselves. And I think it is great, and it can be really important to acknowledge like, hey, costs are going up for everyone. We're doing our best to still have this be accessible. And the reality is like, we need to make sure that we can pay our employees, that we can pay ourselves, that we can cover the bills so that we can feed you. I always like to bring it back to like, this price is the price we need in order to actually sustain the farm. Because if we can't sustain the farm, then we're not feeding you at all. So I think it can feel uncomfortable because none of us want to, just raising your prices can feel uncomfortable. And I don't think there's anything that can completely take that away. And it's really just about being clear about the information. But I don't think you need to start defending it before anyone even engages. Does that help? Yeah. Yes.
So we're in a transition moment at my farm where it's just been my partner and I, and so it feels really easy often to tell our stories. And we're about to start hiring a team. And I'm curious if you have tips on how to continue that story forward.
Yeah.
Style of marketing while also making sure that like your team doesn't become invisible behind the owners.
That's great. So one, I would check in with anyone on your team to ask them how they feel about being a visible part of the story. And I say that because I've posted pictures of people working with us and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't even ask if they feel okay about this. So start there. Say, do you want to be a visible part of our story? Because we would love to include you, but we also are okay with whatever you feel comfortable with. Because I think that consent and that relationship is really important with our employees just as much as it is with our customers. And then you can, so I've seen, there's a farm in Maine called Frith Farm, and I love their Instagram because it's like, they just pass it around. Like they're all taking turns and then just like sign their name of like who was posting on Instagram that week. And I also think it's a great opportunity to start to expand the story of your farm beyond the two of you so that it's a great kind of pivot to be like, now this is a story of our community. And you can kind of going back to that first quote I shared about like capitalism and marketing and like the cult of personality. A lot of people that I've talked to are like, I don't want this to be all about me because it's actually about feeding our community. And so I think it's important that people can understand who's behind it in a certain sense, but you get to decide how much of your faces are out there and how much of it is about the work versus about you personally. So again, that's like an ever evolving thing. But yeah, I love, in our emails being like, oh, and our employee Peter, like, so for example, this year is the first year that my husband and I have not done our CSA drop, and instead our employee is doing it. So I've been able to say, yeah, like Peter's great, like, share some things about who he is and how important he is to the farm. And I think it can be fun to like, if your employees are people who want to be active in marketing, you can find ways to share that with them. And yeah, I think it would be a conversation between the whole team of like, how do you want to do this? But I think it's a great way to open up and have more engagement with your farm too. Yeah. Yes.
Any insights for general audience for your conversion or from your conversion from MailChimp to ConvertKit?
Oh, so like how it's worked, how MailChimp versus ConvertKit works, like, yeah, so I switched from MailChimp to ConvertKit because, and this was a few years ago, but I was at the point of ready, like I now pay for our email marketing. There are a lot of free plans, but ConvertKit I have found much easier to use, much more straightforward, and the ability to create automatic sequences is a lot easier. And trying to think of like, I've always had pretty high open rates and click-through rates, but we could talk more about this after because because it's 9:34 and I realized, so if anyone wants to come down and talk any more specifics, you're welcome to. But I do want to honor the time frame and know there are some other places you may need to be. So again, feel free to email me, get some resources at the website, and yeah, and keep talking about changing marketing for the better and creating those relationships. Thank you.